So today morning we heard from Professor Hirwani that interestingly one of the largest customers or folks who need latest reports on the washing machine industry, instead of being the manufacturers, are the detergent makers. And this is actually like a like an eye opener that we don't even sometimes the customer isn't exactly who we think we are. So when you're having an invention and you're on your path to commercialize your inventions and you're trying to make it innovation, you will come across all these kinds of unexpected opportunities. One of the ways you can discover it is by taking the help of seasoned veterans like Professor Hirvani. But the other one of the other ways is to keep interacting with diverse kinds of individuals who could end up being your customers. So that is probably the intention behind this session, that you try to understand the process of from going from your invention to an innovation, wherein the aspects of planning your business and trying to acquire as much as you can market share for as little or as whatever budget you have. Within that budget, you got to keep having more and more customers notice your offering. So that is the intent behind this session. So no plan survives first contact with the target. This is the quote that was given by Helmut von Moltke, and he's a Prussian commander. Now, the so we are talking about business plan, and then it's like this: you make a plan, and it's not going to survive first contact. So why would you still make a plan? Because the alternative is, if you don't make a plan, then you're probably going to end up failing. And this is something that Benjamin Franklin said. So there are two extremes to it: you plan and the plan has to fail. But if you don't plan, then the consequences are still similar. You might end up still failing. So you have to balance these two contradictory forces, and make the most out of it. So what's the plan? There could be several different plans for various different aspects of your business. A startup plan for the pre-series A. Before you get your series A, you could have a certain kind of a business plan. There could be a internal business plan, which is something that you don't want to be leaked out in the wider market, so you keep it in a confidential basis between your top management. There could be a strategic business plan, which is more or less around how you will deal with competitors. Some of the things that Hirwani sir had taught in the morning about how you deal with whether you want your patents to just be in isolation, or whether you want them to be like your moat, to stop competitors from entering into your space. Feasibility plan, whether like Biola ji had said in the afternoon, that there is a certain aspect called prototyping, and wherein you'll have to plan whether the feasibility of your invention for a given user base is probably going to be worked out or not, like whether you'll get the necessary parts to manufacture it, and so on. But out of all these different kinds of plans which are applicable to a business, we are going to look at the plans which venture capitalists are now expecting you to provide. And that is proposed by a Swiss gentleman called Alexander Osterwalder. So this is a modified version of the business model canvas. This was modified by a evangelist called Ash Maurya, and this is the lean canvas. This is more or less tiered and focused on the uh, aspects that a tech business would go through, where you have your whole objective is to have faster sprints, faster feedback from your customers, so that you are doing something that is required, that is relevant. And as such, you will see there are some differences, but like the point is, if you and your entire founding team, all the people who are concerned about the monetization of your patent portfolio, come together and on one single, it can be a large paper, it can be an A3 size paper, but on one single paper, all your team members start, talking together. One of the big reasons things happen, like Kodak, the largest manufacturer of digital films, they did not allow their own invention, the first digital camera, to get commercialized, because they were simply not open to it. They thought that if this is commercialized, it would cannibalize their largest bread earning segment, which is the films. So if the digital films are not necessary, what will Kodak do? They just couldn't imagine themselves as something other than a film company. And they were so sure that this bulky and delicate instrument, which was how the digital camera looked at its earliest iteration, they just didn't find it as a competition, because film cameras were so much more sleek, so much more portable, and much more easier to buy, because of the economies of scale had already been behind that technology. One prototype of a digital camera at its onset was much more expensive than one of the units of mass manufactured film camera. And that's how some of the large top managements in some large corporations, they get siloed. They just feel that what they know is the truth, and nothing beyond that can affect the business. And that is where, whether you take the approach of the business model canvas, which is more towards all kinds of businesses, or whether you take this lean canvas approach, helps you to have all the stakeholders of that invention focus on making that an innovation, you know going through all the hoops that you need to go through, all the iterations that you need to go through, all the customer feedback that you need to incorporate in order to make that invention a household staple, the successful innovation. Now, now we will see some examples. And as you can see, that this is the number one thing that starts is the customer segments. Not being sure or not being clear about whom you are tailoring your invention's utility for, whether or not, so your invention could be something that is used by a user. However, you need to have that distinction in mind, that who is your customer. If your user is not your customer, whatever marketing you create, whatever ad messages or slogans you create, it has to take the attention of the customer, so that the customer would work for the user. So when is it that the customer is not the user? It can be that the customer is parents but the user is children. This is typical for the online learning providers like Baiju. They have to make the parents sensitized to the advantages of online learning and how the offerings of Baiju make their kids smarter. But the users are not the parents. The parents are not going to learn fourth or sixth standard math. Indian parents learn it along with their kids, but even if they do, the kids have to take the exams by themselves. So the ultimate users are the kids themselves, because a lot of parents simply don't have the time to sit with their kids nowadays. So the customer segment can have multiple divisions. It can be like the way I said, user and customer, versus customer is at the end of the day somebody who is going to, benefit your take benefit of the invention and help you to make the company bigger and better. Either it is through exchange of money or it is through the exchange of data. So in the case of, let's see, your invention, once you make your invention, you really don't know who would end up taking in some sense, but you have to have some idea. You don't have the concrete idea. You're not really sure that just women would take. There might be some women in some cities who would take more of it, like if it is related to temperature control, or some cities like Texas or Gandhinagar, where the temperature is typically higher. These kind of temperature control related inventions would be of more value. Similarly, is it related to males, is it related to females, so on and so forth. So the different customers have different aspirations. Is it an urban person, is it a university goer, is it a professional, so on and so forth. You have to keep iterating and thinking about who would benefit from your invention. The customer centricity, it's so important now. Every other business and offering that is out there makes this a very big deal, and so should we. If we don't want our inventions to just remain papers, just to remain a part of the patent database, if we want it to be noticed, we need to have some kind of customer centricity about who could take advantage of these inventions. And these kinds of customer centric approaches, there are many ways to make a profile of your customer. One of them is user journey maps. You literally take the photos of the kinds of users you are looking to help, and you start trying to make the invention matter more to these people. And this is a company wide document, this lean canvas. It stretches from, the marketing department, the product design, the product manufacturing, and so many aspects of your business are tied to this one document. So there has to be some priority, something you would prioritize. And like I said, when you go from the right to left, you would think that after customer segment you would want to work on the unfair advantage and the channels and so on. But actually, Ash Maurya, in his experience of running multiple such sessions with startups in Silicon Valley, proposes that after you have taken notice of your customer, you need to really start looking at the problem. Ideally, you would file your inventions after you have factored in the needs of the customer. The needs of the customer, the unmet needs actually, is the place where you will get maximum opportunity and open space. Unmet needs. Just think about it. This one statement opens the doors to satisfy one of the criteria of patentability, that is industrial utility. So from there, you start digging down into the problem. Generally, a patent which is only useful for one problem or is a solution to just one aspect isn't that lucrative or important as a patent which could, solve multiple issues. And when you try to target the customer and when you start looking at their problems, you see that there are so many unmet needs. And even though the needs are unmet, there are still some kind of existing alternatives that are available that the customer somehow uses as a temporary fix, as a jugaad, as a,
So are you
you
ready? Who
know,
is ready? Who
yeah.
is ready?
So somebody is talking. Kindly mute yourself.
Who
Yeah.
is ready with the story?
So the existing alternatives also need to be noted down in the problem section itself. Then you move on to the unique value proposition, and what about your invention is unique, and this is also, going to tie down with the one of the criterias of patentability, and that is novelty. So you see how a lot of these things, they keep resurfacing these concepts. So you have this unique value proposition, the unique aspects of your business,
Yeah,
and
exam it.
then you focus on the solution. So as you saw earlier when Biholaji was mentioning, we would ideally like to spend 80% of the time on the problem, and that's pretty much how design thinking also is synologous or harmonious to this approach. Is that when we mention the problem, it's including the customer, the empathy phase of the customer, and what is unique or novel that you can create to address the problems that you've found out through your empathy surveys. And then you go to the solution, and once you've chalked out a solution, then you have to look at the channels. Which channels are available to you that are within your budget, that can help you to get maximum customer retention and customer feedback. And then you start looking at, okay, I have channels, I've conveyed what I want to offer to my customers and how my inventions are targeting certain pain points of the customers, so the customers are aware now. But if I don't have a method to receive their payments, then that's a real hassle, and that's where revenue streams come in. You got to make sure that the customers can actually pay you, and then you got to see that what is the difference between the receivables and your expenses that you're doing in order to offer your invention to them. So that's pretty much why you have to look at the cost structure. And then you got to look at key metrics. What are the metrics? Because this aspect of metrics, it was pretty straightforward in the 80s. Selling cost minus cost price equals profit. But now businesses have evolved, and it's now an established practice to not show a profit. There is a surplus, but that surplus, so you sold something for 100 and your cost was 50, and so you have 50 left, and on that 50, which is your profit, you would have to pay taxes, which is whatever, in USA the taxes were reduced to 17%, but they were, sometimes sometime back they were also 30 or 25%. Depending on different jurisdictions, different amounts of taxes are there. What can you do to further optimize your tax bill using all the legal methods? So that's pretty much where this key metric comes in place. You could increase your cost, you could increase your R&D cost, and if your cost goes up to 99, then your profit is just 1, and then you just pay the fraction of that. So the company's benefit, or the company's resilience to competition, increases as a function of R&D and the number of new patents the company has. And that's pretty much why key metrics is an important part of any lean canvas. And through the culmination of all the ways in which, you handle the existing aid, you got to think of some unfair advantage. Beyond the parent portfolio, what else is your unfair advantage? So Facebook has over 2000 patents, we noticed in my presentation which I had given yesterday. And in spite of that, they didn't hesitate to have a significant stake in WhatsApp or even in Instagram, because by having these two businesses, it is actually expanding Facebook's unfair advantage. So, unfair advantage could be technological, it could even be financial, that you have the cloud and the ability to either outcompete or to acquire your nearest competition. Next, we see an example of Amazon. So, what's with the wrong logo of Amazon? Actually, this is the earliest logo of Amazon. It was active around the 1990s. And as I mentioned yesterday, you in the earliest iteration, when you're at the MVP stage, the minimum viable prototype stage, it's unrealistic to have a very large offering. You have to be as selective as you can, and that's what this customer segment tells us, that in the 90s Amazon was just selective about the needs of book readers. And what was the problems that they had noticed? They noticed that there are lack of online bookstores, and that is the era where people would look through catalogs that were delivered home by the physical post, and then they would cut out coupons in order to take advantage of the offerings in the Walmart or some other nearby bookstore, so that they could, save some money. If people are willing to go through so many hoops of cutting coupons and taking note of on which days what is offered on a discount, the question that Jeff Bezos had in mind is, why wouldn't people want to buy online if I can give them the same kind of cataloging and even more discounts? So with that problem in mind, he started to look at his unique value proposition. I could give you the convenience of being wherever you are, and without spending on fuel or even queuing up in a large bookstore and waiting for your turn to come. Whatever you want comes to you. How cool would that be? And to give this value proposition, this benefit, what are the solutions that he had at that time? That time in 90s, there was no other online bookstore, and that was fairly unique. The idea of people getting access to millions of titles. No single brick and mortar store could house as many titles as the internet, as the website on internet could. And book readers, actually book is a category which takes very little space. Actually, if you think about, you could stack dozens of books in a limited space. And having more books makes your guests feel that you are smarter. So there was a tendency amongst book readers to hoard books, basically to buy more and more books. So this is a segment which has a very avid consumption, and this segment enabled him and a huge variety of books. There can be, like I said yesterday also, there can be books on health, there can be books on wealth, there can be books on scientific subjects, textbooks, cookbooks, fiction. So the diverseness of the segment was the preparatory phase for Amazon to then further diversify outside of books as well. And the existing alternatives were physical stores like Barnes and Noble and other local booksellers. So early adopters are people who were looking for rare and specialized books, internet users looking for book selling services. So, no matter how much of a book hoarder you are, physical space in your house is limited. Why wouldn't you want to sell your books away so that you can get newer books? So, making a place where people can make listings of their own to sell their books. That's something very unheard of in 1990s. And what are the channels? At that time, not many, because that time Facebook wasn't there yet, YouTube wasn't there yet. And he still decided that I could make resellers and affiliates participants in my platform. Booksellers have been around for a while, and people who buy books have to go ahead and exchange the old books for new ones. So they usually get a discount. Why don't I just enable the existing book owners to be resellers? And even if you don't have a book of your own, as long as you recommend one of the books on my platform to people, I could give you a commission, and that is exactly what an affiliate is. So, what are the metrics that Amazon decided to look at? One of the metrics was web traffic and customer acquisition cost and return on investment. So, in the 1990s, the other fancier metrics were not really established much. So, ROI was still the common denominator, and it is still a well established metric. But there are other metrics that you see in companies where the sales is not picking up, but they have other improvements going on in terms of user data. So newer metrics look at how much of the user's data is available to you. Cost structure. So the only way Amazon.com would generate revenue is through sales directly to the consumer. And the cost structure was the hosting of the website, its development, the operational costs, payroll, and so on. So, what exactly is this virtuous cycle? This is pretty much what balloons growth. As you start from a lower cost structure, like I gave you the analogy to all those coupons that would be delivered by mail. Similar to that, if you could give upfront discounts to buy from your store, then you have created a lower cost structure. By eliminating the need to have a physical shop in every city, you could have a hub and spoke model, or a limited, like you could have large warehouses with many delivery agents who would essentially become replacements to the store. And what that does is, with these lower prices, customers get a better experience. Imagine getting 15-20% savings. So if you buy 5 books from Amazon, you essentially were able to get the 6th book for free. Otherwise, for that same money, you would only get 5 books from Barnes and Nobles, but you get 6 on Amazon. That's an incentive for the customer, and it delights the experience of the customer. And the customer would tell others about it, and more sellers would see that, okay, Amazon.com is attracting a lot of traffic nowadays. If I am not on Amazon.com, I'm missing out on the ability to sell these books to those people. So the sellers also start getting on board, and that leads to a wider and wider range of selection. So the customers come back and see, oh, even this new category of books is available. That's nice. I could possibly get a copy of something to do on patent informatics from Amazon. Why not? This is a recently added category. That's something that could attract more and more new customers to Amazon. And that's a virtuous cycle of growth. So, Air, Bed, and Breakfast. This company started in 2008 because Two folks in Silicon Valley in San Francisco found it really hard to get rent for a shorter duration of time, and hotel prices were through the roof. California has one of the highest rental prices in America. How can we help make the cost of living more affordable for folks in California? Is the question they thought for the folks of San Francisco. So, what are the customer segments they looked at? They started thinking of travelers looking for an adequate accommodation experience for a low price. Even though it says low, it's pretty high for San Francisco. But yeah, so how can we break down that? So make it low. Yeah. And people having some accommodation, how could they become a host so that they also get some supplemental income? Who could be the early adopters? People ready to share the residence and earn money as hosts. What is the problem that these customers and these hosts would probably face? Hard to find cheap, affordable accommodation options when traveling. Staying in hotels, travelers cannot get authentic experiences of a location. It's not easy for a homeowner to monetize vacant areas on a day by day basis. Uncultivated home sharing culture. So the problem has been defined or has been chalked out on a preliminary basis. What else can we offer that is unique to us so travelers could get an authentic experience of a local area? So if you live in somebody's house, what are the odds that you could get breakfast with them? Pretty high. You could get to know what is the local food culture. If that person is an artist, you could get to know the local music, the local dance culture, and that enriches your experience as a traveler. And that is something that a hotel just wouldn't be able to offer. And homeowners have taken this to a whole new level. In order to make the property self sustain itself or pay for its own mortgage, homeowners have converted their garages into additional rooms by getting whatever necessary clearances from their local authority. And that helps them to generate anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 or even more, sometimes in a week, sometimes in a month, depending on the location. And that has made owning a home that much more affordable. You could see a lot of these folks on YouTube who've made it their sole business on explaining and educating homeowners how to be more and more appealing and attractive on Airbnb's listings. So, and once you've thought of what you are trying to create a unique offering where the traveler gets to soak in the local culture and at the same time save money, and the host also gets to earn money, what kind of solution is needed? You need a solution where the host can bill by the day and where the host can know that the travelers are people with some kind of legitimacy, some kind of proper documentation, so that they don't, break some laws or something. So Airbnb takes care of records keeping, it takes care of billing, booking, and there's simply no other company that allows average Joes to turn their homes into hotels. So the largest hotel company, instead of being Hyatt or Four Seasons or any of those established players, is Airbnb. Now, when you look at the key metrics section, you would see the metrics are so different from Amazon. In a matter of 14, 16 years from 94 to 2008, you don't see return on investment anymore. And that's what I was earlier alluding to, that even if you're not taking, like if your selling cost minus cost price is not equal to a profit, there are metrics that venture capitalists can accept as a substitute. So what are the metrics that Airbnb defined and got approved by their funding team? Is one of them is number of views to bookings per host. So how many views does it take for a host to get booked? The more bookings happen, the more money changes hands on Amazon Airbnb's platform. And that's a good sign in any business if you see more transactions happen. Number of hosts applied. If you are trying to create a two-sided model where there are renters and when there are hosts, and if any one side becomes too unbalanced, the business doesn't work. So the number of hosts applied is an important metric. And net promoter score. Now, net promoter score is a amazing metric in and of itself, and it could go on and on for hours together. I wouldn't be expanding on it at all in this presentation, but it's a metric that you could keep in mind. And DAU, MAU is daily active users, monthly active users. Excuse me, Biradar sir. Hello.
Yes, yes. Hello.
Yeah. Sir, I would like to know by what time you'd like me to finish.
Up to 3:45 is okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
3:45.
Okay. So that's how Airbnb started to chalk its business. So Airbnb's platforms patterns are more towards the booking engine, more towards enabling the guests to have a 360 view of the places where they're going to get their stay, and to understand more about the story of the host, so that there's a nice cultural fit between the renter and the host, and so on and so forth. And the whole thing is that they got the whole thing tailored for these two main people, main groups of users. So some amount of TAM and SAM would always happen even when you're thinking of your invention monetization. And since I've covered this yesterday, I'm going to breeze through this. So let's assume that this is a different business. So there's a product for oral insulin formulation. So the TAM is blood sugar ailments. What kind of people would avoid needles? They would be the kind of people who would go for oral consumption. And not everybody has cash a lot. If they don't have cash, they need to at least have an insurance cover so that the manufacturer ends up having sales of the product. So this is an example where I said customer and user could be different. So the customer for this case could be the insurance company which pays to the oral insulin manufacturer, whereas the user becomes the person who intakes the insulin, the diabetics. Now, every great marketing campaign always asks the question, why? Why are we even going through the effort of, having this invention out there? And why are we even communicating about this invention? So the why has to be asked several times. And Bihola sir has also said that this is a good exercise to do. Ask yourself 5 times why, 7 times why. And there's even an entire book by Simon Sinek that says start with why. Customers buy flow decoded. So we live in a highly interconnected time, and customer is king, and this has never been more true than today, that customers have freedom to purchase from multiple places. So they are in charge of their journey. They will always seek out the most value for money deal. And not always would they go for the cheapest. And this has been proven by the example of the Tata Nano. Even though it was cheap, it somehow defied the expectation of the average Indian that what a car should feel like. It felt more like a auto than a car, and that switched off some people. So people search all over the place. So you could pay for yourself to come out as the first search result in the mobile and email and display ad and organic search. In each of these, there is some kind of communication happening. The more you can communicate to the pain points and to appear as the unique solution tailored to your customers pain points, the more likely you are to get that customer's attention. So this is the founder of the person who coined the term growth hacking, Sean Ellis, and he has experience in causing exponential growth for Dropbox, for LogMe, and Eventbrite and Lookout. This is It starts with a strong product market fit, then it follows on with persistent experimenting and A/B testing on what drives growth. What drove growth 10 years back may not be relevant today. Three is through top management, impetus to reduce inner frictions and reinvent organization to deliver on the findings from those A/B tests. So when you see that lean canvas, and when I mentioned all the important stakeholders of the invention coming together to make sure it ultimately becomes innovation, that's that's where you also have to concentrate on your growth marketing or growth hacking, communication, and strategy. At this point, do the participants have some questions for me? Hello, participants. Do you have any doubts that you'd like cleared?
Sir, I think they don't have any doubt. We can carry on, sir.
All right, sir. So, what are the ingredients for exponential growth? So, you saw lean startup, and one of the aspects of that is the lean canvas. Then there's technical marketing, there is conversion rate optimization. So, when data and experimenting intercepts with technical tools and automation and marketing and psychology, that's where you have the opportunity for growth hacking. That's where growth hacking really takes off. So your DevOps team, development and operations, development tries to push out maximum features, and operations tries to make sure that the features work together. And so the developers want the user experience to get better with the features. The operations want to make sure that the new features do not end up breaking the entire stack, the entire offering. Then there's got to be some kind of balance between these two. So data science and evidence based approach is a good way to balance them. You end up carrying out various experiments on your communication, whether it is through a website or through email or through any other medium, and you take that input and then you focus on prioritizing which features come first and which come later. Let's move on. Channels. For growth, one needs to focus on which channel can help acquiring maximum interest from your users and customers for your invention. So Would you be direct versus indirect? Indirect means you would have your offerings be on Walmart shelves or DMart shelves. And direct is when your customers order online. So awareness is important, and it can have multiple implications. People, in order to make the awareness rise, rent billboards for 30 to 50 lakhs a week, especially on high traffic areas, just for awareness, distribution, feedback, communication, evaluation. We'll see this in further detail. So most of the digital marketing, you can see it satisfies the aspects of channel now. It's one of the only kinds of channels that a startup or a low budget team of inventors has access to in order to get more and more feedback from your customers. If you put a billboard on Linking Road or some other important high traffic area, your customers' feedback is not going to be known to you. But if you have a conversation with your email with your customers via email or via phone, you could know what are their problems. So this is the wide gamut of social media offerings that many of us have come across. And search engine marketing, SEM, search engine optimization, SEO. SEO is more towards the organic search part, where you enter a search term and you appear on the first or second page. This could be on the first or second page of Amazon, it could be the first or second page of Google, or first or second page of Airbnb. And then there is marketing. So whatever was the search term entered, as long as you bid on those terms and you appear in the first five as an advertisement, so then it becomes SEM. When you are marketing and bidding on those search terms, it's billed either by pay per click or cost per click or cost per thousand, which is cost per mile or meal. Meal is thousand. Social media marketing, everybody has heard of this. We keep seeing so many offerings and so many advertisements interlaced in our Facebook and Instagram feed, and so on and so forth. Moving on. Have a look through this slide. It talks about the exponential growth of Hotmail, which is one of the most oldest growth hacks, even before the term was coined. Just one line at the end of the email, sent using Hotmail, and get your own free email at Hotmail, had increased their signups per day to 3,000 and doubling the user base within 6 months from 500,000 to 1 million, which is 10 lakhs. And they sold to Microsoft 1.5 years after launch. By then, they had 12 million users at a time when only 70 million people were online. That's amazing. Almost a 20% market share. So, the key takeaway is that whatever you're inventing, the current users, can you have them be your spokesperson? And it may be possible for your business, it may not, but you need to see as a in a as unobtrusive way and as stealthily, or at least with the permission of the user. Okay, you have to make sure that the user knows that this line is at the end of the email, and the user, if he doesn't want that line, they should have the right to delete it. But how many people actually have that much time in hand to keep deleting it from every line? And the opportunity or the signature where this line comes, if it is pretty deep under the directory structure of your settings, likelihood is that a lot of users will not delete this line or get the free email at Hotmail. And you still see this when you send your emails through iPhones. You still see this, send through iPad, send through iPhone. You see that in the last line somewhere. So this is one of the original growth hacks. One line makes a lot of difference. Airbnb, what growth hack did they use? So they saw when people are searching for hostels and cheap accommodations, they always go to messaging boards and they ask advice of people who are from that city. So then why not look at who are the people who give this advice on Craigslist? Craigslist is a message board where people come together and anonymously exchange tips. It is like Quora. And on Craigslist, they found influencers, because at that point, nobody expected Craigslist people who answer questions to have any influence to begin with. But there were people who had a lot of following on Craigslist because they were pretty helpful to the community. So what did Airbnb do? Well, they gave this kind of an incentive to users of Airbnb to go and put a listing of their experience on Craigslist. So then the user becomes influencer. That in itself allowed the company to exponentially shoot up in terms of active users, MAU, DAU. And it's something that gives people a kind of badge of honor that, yeah, I stayed in this amazing property. Check me out. Look, this property has a swimming pool and the cost was less than 4 seasons. And the host was so generous. He gave me such an amazing pie. That's the thing. User delight has to be communicated across as wider a community as you can. And only then can you expect your inventions to reach to the masses. Since then, Craigslist has made it a point to reduce the number of Airbnb listings that show up on Craigslist and manage to make sure that Airbnb pays Craigslist itself instead of the users. So yeah, whenever there is a hack, an exploit, an opportunity, some platform or the other will try to plug that leak. But so what? There's no way you can stop satisfied users from communicating about the benefits of the offering. One door or the other opens. And that's the point of growth hacking. Find the door that is open, which has the least amount of barriers, the least entry ticket, the least expense. Because if you bid for the first page of Google, it's going to cost you hundreds of rupees per click or per ad, depending on how competitive that keyword has become. So the unfair advantage part can be further broken down into money, as I gave the example of Facebook, intelligence and insight. As of now, all these large houses and Amazon have such deep connections with manufacturers of goods in China and transportation companies in India that the moment you import a container of something, someone or the other has taken a note of you. That is the level of which backend integration has happened in the large corporates. So if you plan on operating a business where you're offering something to a large corporate, it's pretty likely that the corporate would know what are the basic costs. And if it's a commodity offering, then they would barely let you get away with a 5 to 7% margin. So intelligence and insight, location and luck. One of the biggest reasons why people crazy to go to Silicon Valley, because that location exponentially helps you to get lucky in securing funding. Silicon Valley alone in the last year itself and the year before, I suppose, it has given away $60 billion in venture funding. And Texas, the city which is south of Silicon Valley or California had managed to come in at around $7 billion. So there's a big difference that location can bring in terms of getting lucky and finding funding. Education and expertise and status. So education and expertise, companies like DeepMind, the first historical achievement, the game of Go, where you try to have so many permutations and combinations of just black and white marbles. For the first time, a human was defeated by a computer by DeepMind. And status. So human beings have a societal need, and in that societal need, someone wants to have some kind of exclusiveness, some kind of importance. And can you enable to satisfy the self-confidence, self-esteem needs through your platform? So revenue stream, if you enable the revenue of your end users to go up, likelihood of your revenue of your end users recommending it to their circle will increase. And these are few examples of how Pay Kickstart enables people like entrepreneurs to sell more so that their revenue increases and automate their business online. Next is the lean canvas example for LinkedIn. Since we have discussed the lean canvas example of Amazon and Airbnb, we can decide to come back to this if time permits. And something more to look at, Neil Patel is a pretty well established figure in terms of the marketing community at large, and he has put forth these further metrics at different stages for understanding whether your conversion is increasing or not. It's easiest to acquire or get conversion in a phase where the money value is low. How many people who use Zoom for free are going to convert into paying customers? That number always comes down. Free users, free email acquisition, free beneficiaries, huge conversion. Having them to become paying customers, the conversion keeps dropping. So if the metrics that you put forth are not accepted by your VC, you might not get subsequent rounds of funding. And if the metrics you had put up in place, you keep changing them because they are hard to satisfy, then the VC and the investing team might lose confidence on your ability to deliver. So it's important to choose metrics that are relevant for your invention to reach to your end users and not get carried away by metrics that large corporations are using because they are large and you are a baby, you are a nascent company. So it's important to consider the metrics. Advertising impact of the last year. What is noted is television ads have come down, outdoor advertisements have come down, but the digital video content consumption has gone up and digital video advertisement has gone up. Overall, the advertising space had shrunk. So if it's pretty hard to acquire a new customer, then what's the other way around it? You cannot advertise for half a crore on billboards where you don't know what your customer thinks of your inventions and offerings and your solutions. So that's where this survey shows that customers trust friends more than brands, and having recommendations from people leads to a lot more trust. 92% of the responders said that. And that is pretty much why, whether it is Zoom or any other company, they always keep giving you benefits to share your experience with others so that they get emails of the other people whom you are sharing it with, and their email list increases. And that is a huge important aspect of any kind of growth marketing or outreach campaign, that the list itself needs to keep increasing. And The existing users on the list need to be incentivized to be your salespersons, to be your advocates, to be your evangelists. So Uber gives ride credits, Lyft also gives ride credits, Airbnb gives travel credit, Coinbase gives some kind of crypto credit, and so on and so forth. Zoom started giving an additional 45 minutes. So in the free tier, the meeting stops at 45 minutes. But Zoom decided that if you registered for another meeting by next week, they would give you another 45 minutes. So that is another kind of a credit. Credit is not equal to money spent. It is a reduction in the cost to the customer. So Zoom isn't actually spending $10 on me. I am getting value worth $10 from any of these offerings. That's always important. You cannot burn through your current round of funding in order to make your customers happier. That would be unsustainable. But you need to make sure that the current round of funding is making your customer become your salesperson. So it's again a conflicting requirement. You need to balance these. So one of the major metrics to understand what is happening to your business because of ads is return on ad spent, total campaign revenue divided by total campaign cost. So I heard this, and you can see this on YouTube as well. One of the biggest investors, Chamat Pahalapatya, he said that almost 40 cents on a dollar go back to Facebook, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft also, if you're advertising on the Microsoft Play Store. So how can you make sure that your ad spend is actually making your company more resilient, more known? One of the metrics is this. So you spend $100 to convert one person. So cost per acquisition is $100. Revenue that one person gave you is $50. So that is going to give you a return on ad spend of 0.5. And in the same case, if you had got a $300 revenue and you had spent the same $100, then your return on ad spend is 3, which is the whole point, that you want to increase your return on ad spend. One of the ways to do that is to make sure that each customer you acquire spends enough or much more than what you are spending to acquire that customer. Then you are on a positive surplus. If your CPA is 100 and the revenue generated is 300, you have a surplus. You may want to deploy that surplus for R&D. That is a different conversation, but you got to create a surplus. So different tiers of campaigns have differing ROAs, and from higher priority to lower priority, catch-all campaigns, general campaigns, they tend to have a less ROA. But very specific campaigns, targeted campaigns, that can help get a greater ROA. So email marketing, most folks that are online have some kind of email. It's like your passport on the internet. If you don't have an email, you cannot really take advantage of the internet nowadays. All these values and offerings and services are tied to some or the other email. So 3.9 billion users, and it's still growing. And so what is the typical marketing email marketing flow? You try to have more and more customers on your website, or flow in through social media and everywhere else, and enter their email through either receive it through a pop-up or through a slide, or before people close your go away through your website, ask for an email, and so on. Then you start targeting them on different occasions through different triggers, engage them, and have them become your paying customers. These are some of the email marketing software as a service tools. HubSpot is pretty popular. It has multiple benefits. Various triggers can be set. Triggers and automation is essentially if this, do that. So if somebody responds to a given email on a congratulatory note or on a festive note, give them a special coupon code, so that that lead which was responsive becomes even more energized to be a participant or to be a buyer in the upcoming festive season. Keep in mind, this happened a lot with Facebook in the big billion day sale. Then marketing flow. So prospects are shown or brought to your website through advertisements on pay-per-click basis from Google, keyword ads. And from the website, you try to capture the detail as much as you can. Based on the data and the demographics details that you captured, you have to create a meaningful communication that makes the customer feel connected with you and addresses a pain, need, or desire of the customer. And then through that, you again understand what is the behavior. Is there a purchase done? And then you give a thankful email, thanking email, and a transactional email of the payment receipt, and you have them in your watch list, because once somebody buys from you, they are an active user and the lifetime value of these user is higher. So likelihood of converting an existing paying customer into a repeat buyer is much easier, much more often done and seen than having a cold lead convert into a new buyer. So one of the examples of automation you can see here, the contact form, blog, lead magnet, free trial email, then after 2 days. All this is actually happening automatically by software. So you have to plan the software to wait for 2 days, then you have to tell the software whether it is HubSpot or whichever other tool you decide to use. You must choose a tool in which you have all these facilities at play so that people know about their invention, but they don't get spammed. You don't want too much information each hour. Then the likelihood of your user unsubscribing from your list is much higher. And once they leave your list, it's highly unlikely they would give you their email again. So this wait for 2 days is important, and having a software that allows you to do different kinds of emails is important. Mailchimp campaign dashboard. If you open Mailchimp, gives you free access, so I have chosen this, but do not be fixated on this company. There could be a newer company having better features, more value for money. Keep your eyes on the lookout for what gives you the most bang for your buck. And the idea is that you do not sit and enter manually the names of each and every person who gives you their email. That is just not sustainable. So participants, tell me, what do you see next to the word dear? In the letter from the president, next to the word dear, you don't see the name of the sender or the receiver. You see a tag called fname. Similar tags allow you to make the email more customized so that the end receiver would benefit and feel that you are taking extra attention for them. User segmentation, lists based on intent, product newsletter, company updates, groups based on the common interests. There could be a group of people who are interested in season bats. Don't give them uh, Batman related posters, right? So, what is the interest group? Segments based on location. Tags, like I gave you an example of the F name tag. The name tag can differ from email marketing service to service. But yeah, there has to be tag. So there are different types of emails. Look through them. And when you tag people, you can further, fine tune your communication. Zoom, we have seen that Zoom is mostly acquiring users through emails and stuff, but it is also taking a look at its competition and understanding that if it wants to be appealing to the mass market or to the customers who are large corporates, it will have to spend and be visible where those large corporates are also there. So whether it's an NBA game, whether it's the London bus service, whether it is in an airport. So after raising funds, they slowly started rolling out physical advertisements for a video conferencing app. Even that happens. So if you are aligning your vision, strategy, execution, value, and culture, these are all the aspects of your communication. Based on these, you will have a kind of tone of your communication so that you are able to have the right kind of audience in the early stage. A/B testing is the part where you start having your two versions of your website so that you can understand what kind of call to action buttons are appealing to your users. It could be any one element which is different across version A and version B. And after the both of the versions are given access to 100,000 users or 1,000 users, depending on how vast your user daily visits are, daily active users are, you would see that what was the conversion rate, how much more interest were you able to pick up from the users. So the control page design, these can be the various one of these aspects from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are all various aspects, and one of these you would change in between A and B. User details, form design, these are some examples. By changing some aspects of the form, you were able to see that the optional, if you make it compulsory to give a lot of information to your user, they will end up just closing the page and going away. But if you make it optional, then only those that really need whatever you're offering would end up giving their information. And those kinds of users might convert into customers. Browsers actually, they might end up becoming your customers. So video impact on our page optimization, Vidya.com has done this survey, and they found that a page with a video message has a higher likelihood of getting the desired action done from the user. Active Campaign is a alternative to Mailchimp, and so what did they do? They saw that it's all about personalization for the target visitors, and it's not really right to bog down the user with a lot of feature list and details. And so even if you have your own invention, if you are so caught up in your invention and you just keep talking about the benefits that you think or the technicalities that you think make your invention superior, instead of making it more uh, tuned to the user, then you stand to end up being uh, overtaken. So here they have made the feature list less and they made it simple. This is the one key thing for which we are the best, and that is why users give them their email. And how did they change in 2021? They made it into three buckets. So those who want to, do automation for e-commerce, for digital business, for B2B companies, they made three different buckets, and they made people realize that we are still very relevant for automation in these three areas. Shopify. This is the company I had mentioned earlier in the slide yesterday. It is one of the alternatives to Amazon. It helps you to build your own Amazon, and the share price has taken off like anything. So the number one thing it says is that all it takes is just enter your email and you can start your own shop. And it's very minimalistic. And that's a theme for this year. Not too much details, not too many empty forms and fields and stuff. Just start as frictionlessly as you can. And the share price has gone up crazy. So instead of just minimal friction, what else can you do for making the outreach better? And customer acquisition turnaround time. So this shows you that irrespective of whether it is consumer electronics, appliances or books or groceries or apparel, early user acquisition ad spend makes the company's budget look negative. You always end up spending more than what you earned. So to get one user, you're spending some money on them. And throughout the lifetime of that user, you might recover that investment. So what does it mean? It means that you have to make sure that the existing users are well met, well looked after, well segmented, and well communicated so that they will again become purchasers. Then only you'll be able to recover the ad spend cost on them. B2B Quotes is a freelancer connection portal. And so their call to action is get 3 quotes now. Instead of saying submit your details now, that is so boring. And they've made it even more fun. Find your partner now. In 2021, they've changed their get 3 quotes now to find your partner now. Make it more humane. HubSpot, one of the biggest players in the marketing automation space, it makes 2 kinds of segments for marketing and for sales, and then everything else is fine-tuned according to that. So 2 segments, sometimes it's not optimal enough, then go for 4. So similarly, it's a Chennai-based company, Zoho, and here they are bidding on the name of the competitor. And whenever people look for alternatives to Mailchimp, this term alternative and the term Mailchimp, then Zoho comes up. So key metrics, we've covered this. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I'm open to your questions. Sir?
Sir, anybody is interested to? Okay, sir. I think nobody is
Okay.
asking the questions. I'd like to thank Mr. Akashdeep.
Thank you,
It's a
sir.
very interactive session.
Welcome, sir.
Now, on the behalf of management, principal, HOD of PDACE College of Engineering, I would like to thank the resource persons, Dr. Bodkar, Dr. Biola, Akashdeep sir, Dr. Hirwani, and special thanks to Dr. Prakash Apte sir for agreeing to conduct the webinar on a very short notice. So I also like to thank our president, Dr. Bhimashekar Bilmudi sir, Dr. Praveen Hongutikar sir, our convener Shan Pashetti sir, TEQIIP coordinator, faculty for department for all their support and motivation. So I thank all the participants for from different institutions and also from our college who attend the seminar and made it successful. Thank you. Now our convener, Dr. Professor Shan Pashetti sir will address the participants now.
Thank you, Biradar. Good evening, everyone. It was a great time for 3 days, 2 days, and I'm very thankful to our all the presentations we have made and a wonderful session. I thank all the participants, and I'm very much thankful to the MHRD for giving an opportunity to organize this 2 days workshop on IPR, and all the experts, guest lectures, they were very, very extraordinary. They have presented. I'm very thankful to you, and also all the participants. Thank you very much. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now, so dear participants, I'll put the feedback form on the WhatsApp group. Kindly fill the form and send the feedback. So we'll get the certificate through your mail. So thank you one and all for your extraordinary response to our webinar. Those who are not on the WhatsApp group, you can directly contact me on my WhatsApp number. So I'll send you the feedback form so you can get the certificate. Thank you one and all. Thank you all the participants and all the resource persons for their cooperation and all the motivation they have given me to conduct this webinar. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.